This is On the Sports Lines. Now entering the studio are today's panelists. First, a man by the way of Bronx, New York, although you'd think he's from Pennsylvania by the way he says it, and is a Sixers and Steelers fan. A man whose first 7 words out of the womb were, I believe, "Here we go, Steelers, here we go."
Actually,
Mr. Jay Kaplan.
No, but
Next,
that's me.
from Brooklyn, New York, a man who lives seconds away from the Barclays Center, and you'll tell it to everybody. A man who loves his cat and loves his anime, has both appeared in his Instagram stories frequently. Mr. Lolo Jones himself, Anthony Strait.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And by the way, Mrs. Lolo Jones is doing just fine for all you who are concerned.
And now, here is the host of On the Sports Line, Stephen Rabinowitz. You need to let me finish my damn intro, Anthony. Jesus, man.
I'm not used to the formal intros. I'm sorry.
Well, it's a formal intro because that is my dream open as a man who currently still has Jeopardy on his DVR season pass. If I wasn't dreaming to be a sportscaster, I was dreaming to be a game show host like Alex Trebek, who died this week of pancreatic cancer at the age of 80. So rest in peace, Mr. Trebek, and I will be putting in some Jeopardy themes on this week's episode. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Rabbi.
Good evening.
And I do approve of the Alex Trebek tribute tonight. I was a big fan as well, so I am 100% behind this.
Yeah, you know what? I just got through watching one of his final shows that he taped before he passed away. It's clearly not the same. I mean, let's not forget, Alex Trebek is a big hockey fan too. You know, a few weeks ago he announced one of the NHL picks during the draft. So Alex Trebek is a cultural mainstay that is going to be dearly missed.
And he did some Stanley Cup intros for the Stanley Cup playoffs in 1987, if you ever want to see that on YouTube. And he also actually has suggested Alex Faust, a claimed national announcer and LA Kings announcer, to be his replacement. Who knows what will happen with that? But we move on to sports tonight. And we'll start, guys, as we start always in Jeopardy, with the category of the opener. So, ladies and gentlemen, here is the first answer. This man is bringing a new hope for the New York Mets. Raise your hand if you know. Jay?
Who is Steve Cohen?
Correct! As of this past Friday, Steve Cohen is the new majority owner of the New York Mets. No more Wilcox. One of the most fiscally conservative clubs is now led by the richest owner in baseball. The move and the press conference that happened on Tuesday was considered an overwhelming success from fans, but that doesn't help until we actually get on the field, Anthony. How does that relate?
You know what? I watched some of the press conferences the other day, and Cohen said all the right things. He said that champions are not bought, they are built, and he said that he was going to be an owner that was going to stay out of the way. So I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing so far. I mean, he's still the right things, but it's going to come down to what happens on the diamond. And obviously the Mets, it's also a good start. They re-signed Marcus Stroman for the qualifying offer. Noah Syndergaard was shown warming up, and he's well on track to rejoin the team sometime in June. But again, it comes down to what happens on the field, and it's assuring for Met fans to have an owner who is going to invest back into the team. I think that was one of the biggest knocks on the Wilpons, especially after the soap opera with the Ponzi scheme and Bernie Madoff a decade ago, that the Wilpons would not open up the wallets to help to give the Mets the financial resources that they needed to compete, especially when you think about the Mets being a big market team, but playing but with small market mentality. So now with an owner that is willing to kind of go Steve Ballmer and kind of revitalize a franchise that's been somewhat dormant the last few years, you always got Met fans kind of thinking about, you know, who can we sign and who can we trade for. But I think Cohen's got the right idea that he wants to build a team up, not just to win, to compete for a year or two, but to be kind of a long distance mainstay, kind of like how the Dodgers have been this decade. You think about the Atlanta Braves of the 90s, and even the Yankees for the last 22 years. You know, being consistently good, consistently competing year after year. And I would say with the Yankees, a part of that was because of their ability to develop the farm system during the early phase of the Yankee dynasty in the 90s. You know, you think about the Jeters and the Jorge Posadas and Mariano Rivera that came out, but also it wasn't going out throwing big money to key free agents. You had cast-offs like David Cohn and Jimmy Key, Darryl Strawberry, Cecil Fielder that kind of joined along, Scott Brocious later down the line, and Paul O'Neill and Wade Boggs. So the Yankees weren't exactly a team that threw money at these big-time superstars until later on. The more, George Steinbrenner kind of got more involved and wanted to win now. But right now, this is the most exciting that you've seen the Met fan base in a very long time. And like I said, we're going to see what happens on the field, because that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. I mean, the owner can give the resources. It's good to have an owner that is willing to do that. But again, it's a good start to put Sandy Alderson back. And think about Alderson, fingerprints on that team that went to the World Series in 2015.
Give him to me, Mr. Straight. That's my line.
In 2015 and a wild card team in 2016. But one of Alderson's key moves was the trade of R.A. Dickey that brought in the draft picks that became Travis d'Arnaud and Noah Syndergaard that helped the Mets get to the World Series in 2015. So he does have the experience with young players, with bringing in, developing young talent, and even making roster moves that help the team in the long term. So that's definitely a good start behind the gate for Steve Cohen.
Thank you for setting me up. Because for me, look, as much as, I have wanted to see the Wilpons sell the team, even, being a Yankee fan, so looking at it from a bit of a remove, to finally have these guys gone and have an owner who understands baseball economics and understands baseball, because he is and has been an unabashed Met fan for his entire life. So, but for me, guys, the future is as much about Sandy Alderson back running this front office as anything else. In his first tenure as running baseball operations, he was hamstrung by the Wilpons' constant interference, coupled with their unwillingness to spend money to improve the team. The fact that Cohen tapped Alderson to run things again as the club's president, overseeing both baseball and business operations, even before the sale was final, tells me that Cohen recognizes what Alderson brings and is entirely comfortable leaving baseball ops in the hands of people who know how to do it. What I found interesting is that Alderson cleaned house, getting rid of everyone who was hired by the Wilpons practically, seemingly before the ink was even dry on the sale, and Cohen stayed out of it. Cohen has said that he will spend money to improve the team, as Anthony said. Whether he'll go as far as the team on the other side of the Whitestone Bridge is yet to be determined, but it does seem that Alderson will have a budget befitting a team in a major market. He's looking to hire 2 executives under him to run the day-to-day operations and then build out from there. And now with the Wilpons gone, any job in the Mets front office is now a lot more attractive. It also means that a Mets front office under Cohen can have new improved priorities. Something that Alderson said should be telling about the change in approach that he's looking to implement. He spoke about reliever Brad Hand being put on waivers and how it would have been handled if he and Cohen would have been in place at the time. Here's the quote: "If the timing had been a little bit different, we might have jumped on that. It's probably overpaying a bit, but today, given what we want to achieve, it's not about how much less we can get somebody for. It's more about getting that somebody. I don't want to create the impression that we're just going to go out and sign a bunch of players, but I think we now can emphasize the acquisition rather than the cost." And guys, if that's not a 180-degree paradigm shift from business under the Wilpons, I don't know what is. Under the Wilpons, the Mets, not only were they seldom players in free agency, but they also rarely invested much in the organization's infrastructure. They lagged behind practically every other team in Major League Baseball in terms of analytics and staffing up that department. And the franchise watched as talented baseball staffers left for more money or better jobs elsewhere. All that will change in a Mets organization owned by Cohen and run by Alderson. When Sandy Alderson was first hired by the Mets back in 2010, his assistant GM, Paul DePodesta, who was with Alderson in Oakland, with that was the Alderson Billy Bean start of Moneyball era. They talked about unleashing Moneyball with money. That never happened because the Mets had less money than anyone realized at the time. Now that he's working for Cohen, the wealthiest owner in Major League Baseball, Alderson may finally get a chance to see if that philosophy will work. And for me, that's what's going to be interesting to follow as things move forward.
You know, the New York Post actually says that his net worth is higher than Hal Steinbrenner's, Jim Dolan's, Woody Johnson, and John Mara and Tish's combined.
Those guys inherited their money. Cohen earned his as a hedge fund guy.
And he paid $1.8 billion in fines in 2013 and still purchased the Mets for $2.6 billion.
And that was actually down from his previous offer the year before.
Yeah.
He actually made out like a bandit.
Yeah. And you mentioned the fact that it's a Steve Ballmer situation. Like, he's trying to change the culture of the franchise. However, if you knew what happened with Steve Ballmer, he used his money in the wrong places, although it's still to be determined. We're only 1 year into the Clippers era, and saw their brethren across the town their co-tenants win a title. So, and I think we've seen both ways happen in baseball in terms of spending. You see the Dodgers in the NL spending like crazy and winning a title, finally. And you see the Rays with one of the lowest payrolls in baseball, where one player on the Dodgers is almost the entire team of the Rays, do very well. So I think you're going to see a little bit of both, I think, in a Mets organization. As I was talking about with Anthony before the show, they have the pieces, at least hitting-wise. They might want to get somebody by the name of Mr. Real Muto to be on their team to kind of shore up the catching position. I don't know if they need Lindor from the Indians. I'm sure Lindor is kind of like a wish of everybody,
sure,
but we'll see what happens. I think you don't want to put all your eggs into the basket in year one. If you do that, you might be making some mistakes, and I'm not just talking about getting Robinson Cano on the short end of his career.
Well,
yeah, you know what? I was just talking about this.
Yeah, my question for you guys, since it broke over the last since our production meeting. Return of Marcus Stroman. You like it? You hate it?
I love it. They need pitching depth, especially because the Syndergaard probably won't be back till at least the middle of the year.
Yep. Anthony?
I love it too. You know why? The Mets' biggest problem in this shortened season, it's COVID shortened season, was starting pitching without question. Outside of DeGrom, it wasn't much else. Syndergaard is not coming back till probably around mid-June, and that's being nice about it. And Steven Matz has shown that right now he's I don't know if he's a starting pitcher right now. So the Mets really need the starting rotation. Stroman's a ground ball pitcher, something that the Mets desperately need, especially in Citi Field early in the season, where when the weather does help tend to favor pitchers, but in the summertime as well, when the balls really start to fly in the ballpark. But here's the thing. Trevor Bauer being a free agent, would it be nice if he's a Met and his arch nemesis Garrett Cole is on the other side of town, anchoring the Yankees pitching staff? That would be just for kicks, like in the back pages of the sports session. Would it be really hilarious if those two was either in the same city, or better yet, the same locker room?
Damn, that's where I was
which
going.
Would be even more hilarious.
If Trevor Bauer gets signed by the Yankees and has to play alongside Garrett Cole, and they're the big 1-2 punch at the front of the Yankee rotation, the Post and the News are going to have the back if that happens.
That would be literally Oscar Madison and Phyllis Unger if you ever saw it in a Major League Baseball clubhouse, if that ever happened.
I love Trevor Bauer as much as is. Trevor Bauer is a Yankee. He would become my favorite player, and I would immediately get him.
And by the way, he would not bother by the Yankee way of keeping anything in the clubhouse, okay?
He will. Everybody abides by the Yankee way. Moving on to the NBA. We're going to talk about the NBA tonight, but as you might know, the NBA officially approved their season to start on December 22nd. So tonight we'll focus on the short off season, the shortest in the history of the four major sports. The draft is next Wednesday, and free agency is 2 whole days after that. Let's start with the NBA draft itself. The top 3 picks as the contestants are the Minnesota Timberwolves, who seemingly are looking to get their way off of the stage by trying to find any trade partner, the three-time defending champion, the Ken Jennings of the NBA world, the Golden State Warriors, and the Charlotte Hornets. The top three presumptive picks, Anthony, will start with the son of a contestant that we just want to get canceled out of syndication, but will never, ever happen.
Yeah, you know what? But here's the thing, though. LaMelo Ball, it's been said the last few years that he was the best of the three Ball brothers, and that's including his older brother and New Orleans Pelicans guard Lonzo Ball. We've been down that road with the Ball family. But the good thing is there's less LeVar Ball involvement this time around. So I think we can talk about LaMelo, the basketball player, rather than the circus and the media hype that his father built for Lonzo. And this is according to his reading the scouting report right now. 6'7" point guard. He controls the game. A unique vantage point. Very creative. A live dribbler. But gifted ball handler who excels at the pick and roll. So you think about what if Minnesota actually kept that number one pick, and you need somebody to get the ball to Karl Anthony Towns, who's a big and a guy who can pick and pop. Now you can you add a point guard who can get him the ball a little bit easier. Because I was thinking about Patrick Ewing's early seasons with the Knicks and how he had a hard time getting the ball and down the paint. Then they added Mark Jackson later on, who, like LaMelo Ball, was not a great shooter from outside, kind of iffy on defense, but made Patrick Ewing's life a lot easier, and he started putting up the best numbers in his career, heading into his prime. I'm thinking that way too with LaMelo Ball, but here's the thing as well. Is because LeVar Ball has such a direct involvement in all three Ball brothers' development early on in their playing days. Some of those things have to get coached out. Like, number one, shooting. His shooting's got to improve deep without question. You know, you looked at his stats from Australia last year. He shot just 46% from 2-point range, 25% from threes. That's got to improve. I mean, you got to be able to shoot the basketball in the NBA, especially now where you see more transition and 3-point shooting when teams play small ball. You're gonna have the ball in your hands all the time. You've got to be able to knock down a mid-range jumper every once in a while. And also, he tends to get tentative and passive instead of driving hard to the paint, which is weird because unlike his brother Lonzo, he's actually a very solid free throw shooter. He shoots 82% from free throw shooting. So the fundamentals of being a great point guard for LaMelo is there. He's only 19 years old, so he has plenty of room for development, but he needs to be on a team with a strong coach. And that's where maybe Golden State comes into play because you got Steve Cohen. And right now, the Warriors, they're getting star players. They're getting the Splash Brothers back in full strength, but they have zero depth coming off that bench. And what better teacher at point guard would you rather have for LaMelo Ball than Steph Curry to show him how to run an NBA-style offense? You have a motion offense that is perfect for LaMelo Ball's passing ability and creativity. And also you got a head coach in Steve Cohen that's going to install defense. And that's always been a question mark with the Ball brothers because LeVar was the coach primarily upbringing. We know LeVar is not much of a basketball head coach. I give him all the credit in the world as a father now, but as far as coaching and basketball dynamics, I know Jay giving me that look, he needs to kind of sit this one out, but he needs coaching, and that's on defense. You coach that, but as far as the groundwork to being a franchise point guard, it's there. I mean, it's one question. He is the big name with the most star potential going into the draft. It just depends on who is going to pick him. If Minnesota keeps that number one pick, or somebody trades up for the number one pick.
Like Detroit is kind of being rumored too. By the way, this episode brought to you by Big Baller Brand. Yeah, so Detroit is kind of one of the big rumors on there, and I think Dwayne Casey, who's had a history of being a stern coach with the Toronto Raptors, might be a good choice. Kerr obviously would be the dream choice, and he would be a dream fit for the Warriors, but I don't know if the Warriors will be falling number 2. A lot of people have the Warriors taking Jay's pick at number 2, James Wiseman.
That's great. Rabbi, you mentioned how short the offseason was, and I came across this stat during doing my research for tonight. The Lakers and the Heat will have a 72-day offseason. The delete 8 teams, a 285-day offseason.
Overtime. This is hot.
Just say it. Hashtag 2020, that's all you got to say. Yeah, the guy I am looking at is James Wiseman, the center from Memphis, sort of. He's ranked number 2 on most draft boards, and he checks all the combine boxes for an NBA center. 7'1" with a 7'6" wingspan, gives him ideal size. He's bulked up to 250 pounds and has improved in strength, which should allow him to, take a little more of the pounding you get playing inside in the NBA. He can jump out of the gym, he defends the rim, he runs the floor, and he rebounds the basketball. The only real problem is that Wiseman only has a 3-game collegiate resume, which doesn't give NBA personnel folks much tape to watch to try and determine what they'd be getting. And y'all thought Kyrie's 11 games at Duke was a small sample size. Look, Wiseman is not an NBA-level shot creator like some of the other players near him on the draft boards, but he has genuine Defensive Player of the Year potential down the road. According to sources, and we're talking about players and trainers here who have seen him working out in Miami, there is apparently a genuine buzz that he looks, and here's the word, phenomenal. And said buzz is apparently not coming from players or agents who are repped by the same agency, XL, that Wiseman is repped by. So supposedly this is independent confirmation of how well he's working out. Offensively, look, his game works for the current NBA era we're in if his jumper keeps improving. And his work ethic leads you to believe it will. And if it does, you can see him becoming a pick and pop or trailer 3-point threat in transition at some point down the road. By all reports, he's a good kid, very intelligent, good basketball IQ, takes coaching very well. So he should fit into whatever locker room he lands in. Golden State, maybe they have the number 2 pick should Wiseman fall to them. And if they don't trade it, and there's a lot of rumors coming out from draft people and NBA sources that, they are open for business on the number 2 pick.
As well you should be, especially in a year like this.
Absolutely. No question about it. But, if you put all this together, Wiseman's ceiling is kind of a high-level NBA center on both ends of the floor. Again, it's a really small sample size, and as we know, the draft can be a crapshoot. I do have to say, with all that being said, I do have high hopes for him, though.
Me too, and it's going to be very interesting. I thought it was a 2-game college career at Memphis, but, I'm skeptical. Now, the thing, I have Anthony Edwards, who is the most experienced in college in 1 whole season in Georgia. And it's interesting. I think Wiseman and Ball have a high ceiling, but their floor can be out of the NBA in 3 to 4 years. And I think Edwards has the chance to at least be a role player in the NBA. He has the size. He has the physicality. He had 19 points, 5 rebounds, 2.8 assists at Georgia. Was named to the All-Conference second team and won SEC Rookie of the Year. He is 6'5", 225 with a 6'9" wingspan. And out of the 3 people that we mentioned, Edwards has the best shooting ability of the 3 players that we've talked about. He has the physical tools to improve as a defender at the next level, not just be a 3-and-D guy. His jumper wasn't very consistent in his 1 year at Georgia. And unlike Wiseman's workouts, people gave Edwards a little bit of flack for his workouts because they saw a sloppy jumper. He usually pulls up from NBA range anyway when he was playing in Georgia. And he is someone who needs to learn how to shoot and score in general without holding the ball. He flashed some prominence as a cutter for dunks and layups, but almost all of his looks from the perimeter came off of creating his own shot. He's not a good person in motion as of yet. But I think for a man who's had a full experience in college out of these 3, he's the surest thing here. Maybe, as Jay has said before, and I'll say it again, you have a lot of role players in this draft. But a lot of things have to hit right before they become stars, especially with your Wiseman going to Golden State. All right, let's move on. Let's start our local coverage of the NBA draft and free agency with the New York Knicks. And Jay just mentioned you can have a whole pregnancy first, second, and third trimester between the time of when they last stepped on the court and the next time they stepped onto the court in the spring, and the next time they will meaningfully step on it in winter. They have 2 draft picks at 8 and 27. Jay, who should the Knicks take at number 8?
I got to give you props for the pregnancy theme right there, Rabbi. Well done. The guy I'm looking at, and it's probably not the guy who's been that has been most mocked to the Knicks at number 8, and it's Devin Vassell, who's a guard forward out of Florida State. He's a 6'7", 195-pound sophomore. He averaged 12.7 points per game last year with led FSU. He led them in rebounding at 5.1 per game. Second in steals at 1.4, led them in blocks at almost a block a game. He averaged about 29 minutes per game. Shot 49% from the field, 41.5% from 3, which led FSU. He is the prototypical NBA 3-and-D wing, and he would give the Knicks something they are lacking, shooting and perimeter defense, which plays into this stat that matters from NBA.com. The Knicks were outscored by 11.2 points per game from three-point range. That is the second worst discrepancy in the 41 seasons of the three-point line. Now, Vassell filled a significant role for FSU, who did not rely heavily on a primary scorer. He gave them efficient floor spacing. He finished emphatically on the open floor and flashed a budding ability to create his own shot out of the pick and roll. He needs to improve on his own shot-making ability, but that's partially because he played primarily off the ball last season. Scored with some impressive efficiency. Over half his possessions came as a floor spacer or filling lanes in transition. Averaged 1.22 points per catch-and-shoot jump shot in the half court, which was the 87th percentile in the nation. 1.411 points per transition possession, 94th percentile in the nation. He is a reliable perimeter threat with an impressive natural touch. He's a bit of a long strider, but he does finish at the rim and has a little bit of creativity, and he has solid body control. As efficient as he was off the ball, like I said, he's starting to flash the ability to make some shots off the dribble. It's a question of not he can improve on that at the NBA level. He scored 8.852 points per dribble jump shot in the half court, which is only the 68th percentile, but as we said, spent most of the season off the ball. His ability to make shots in mid-range, make him a weapon in the pick and roll, which as we know is the staple in the NBA these days. He's not especially polished with the ball or as a decision maker, but has a nice natural touch that does translate into other situations. And on the Knicks, he's not going to be asked to be a ball handler or a decision maker. He's learned how to take what the defense gives him, has room to get stronger, 195 pounds. He's going to need to bulk up a little bit. He needs to improve his left hand, develop his vision as a passer on the move. He's got nice length to contest shots. He'll be a factor in the passing lanes, and he can even, protect the rim a little bit. So he allowed only 0.5 points per isolation possession. Wind up playing a lot of ISO defense in the NBA these days. That's the 81st percentile. His wingspan and intensity has helped him hold his own. He's good at contesting shots, competitive defender, and, you're coming out of a program at FSU that is known for its aggressive style of play on both ends of the floor. What you're looking for in the D part of a 3-and-D guy is length, because you need to be able to defend multiple positions when you're going to be a perimeter defender. I thought this was a great nutshell from FSU assistant Stan Jones. Vassell has a great basketball IQ. He's a great finisher in transition. He's got an unbelievable ability to go left or right, take one or two dribbles, and get his primary defender up in the air a little bit. He's a killer on mid-range jumpers. He can elevate before the defense can recover. Any team that values that, he's going to be a perfect addition for him. Add in his ability as a perimeter defender, and to me, he's a perfect fit for the Knicks at 8. Is he necessarily going to be the best player available? Maybe not, but Rabbi, as we said, this is not a top-heavy draft. So if you're the Knicks, find a guy who fits a need. Could it be a bit of a reach at 8? Maybe. But I think this guy fits right with something and fills a need.
It's not, because the Warriors are actually thinking of trading down to get him because he fits very, very well into the Warriors system. He worked out with the Warriors. The Knicks worked him out. I think Thibodeau is a very good coach that I think people are going to want to play for. Just don't tell them they're part of the Knicks organization, and maybe Thibodeau stands a chance actually in getting some people over there.
Whoever is at the 8th pick shouldn't tell Thibodeau that he's a rookie, because we know how Tibbs feels about rookies.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about when we get to Thibodeau, but that's for future shows.
Exactly.
Anyway, there are some oxymorons in this world. Jumbo shrimp, quiet boom, and Knicks draft capital. Nothing I've ever actually heard in my entire life. So the Knicks actually have a second pick at number 27. And Anthony, who should that be?
You know what? Maybe the Knicks should change their name to the New York basketball team, and no one would know the difference. I don't know if you've seen the City Edition uniforms, but they could probably pass as a nameless New York basketball team and that'll attract more free agents. But the guy
I'm going to pass as having a nameless owner, Anthony. Come on.
Good point.
Dan Snyder and Dolan have two similar personalities, so
yeah, that's a good point.
We're just saying.
But the guy I'm looking at number 27 is I call it Tom Thibodeau guy, and that's Isaiah Stewart from the University of Washington. And one thing the Knicks don't have is a high energy big, and this is someone who is a high energy big. I mean, you think about it, he's already big for his NBA size as it is. 6'9" with a 7'4" wingspan. He's already shredded. Plays with a lot of intensity. He's kind of a Bam Adebayo type without Bam Adebayo's development just yet. I mean, Adebayo's an all-star, so it's a bit of a reach to say he's on that caliber level, but he can get there. And also, you think about it, he's a great offensive rebounder. Has to straight to defend the post, something that the Knicks have struggled with. Mitchell Robinson being at center is a guy prone to foul trouble. And obviously, if you're going to play with Tom Thibodeau, you're going to have to stay out of foul trouble. That's something that Mitchell Robinson has not been able to do his first few seasons. Also, he's a guy who sets hard screens, a guy who is a great pick and pop big, who can knock down the mid-range shot, has the ability to expand his shooting range to three-point shooting, which is going to be even more will make him even more valuable for the Knicks if they can get him with that number 27 pick. He does struggle with guarding the perimeter, which is something that he's going to have to work on because teams tend to switch a lot defensively in the NBA these days. Tom Thibodeau is a coach who doesn't switch as much. If you think back to his time with Minnesota and also with the Chicago Bulls, he plays straightforward man-to-man defense, and his teams is routinely in the top 5 defensively each year that he coached those respective teams. So that would help him, and that would help him to some degree. But he's got to know how to move his feet. I mean, you can't be a big and not be able to move your feet and keep guys in front of you, especially if you are calling a switch and roll, because that is the key stigma to playing defense in the NBA, being able to guard multiple positions. But you think about what the Knicks last year of relying on long past upon veterans like Taj Gibson to come off the bench and give him anything in the front court. I mean, this is a young player who has a lot of upside potential. Not to mention, he fits into the hard-working mentality that Tom Thibodeau wants to kind of use as a foundation to try to turn the Knicks around as far as being a team that can eventually compete and make the playoffs in a very, 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 very top-heavy Eastern Conference. We talked about how it kind of falls off the cliff after you go past like the top 5 or 6 teams. So Stewart's ability to be able to maybe come off the bench or even be a starter at power forward does help the Knicks quite a bit. You think about it, they traded Marcus Morris during the season and this is the pick they get from the Clippers in that trade. So this would be a great boon if they were able to move Marcus Morris, who really didn't provide much for the Clippers as far as their postseason disappointment, and to be able to turn that into a high energy guy that the Knicks can to develop in the next couple of years. That would be great. I mean, you think about guys like Charles Oakley and Anthony Bonner and these guys who were limited as far as athletic ability, but they were lunch pail guys who worked hard. You knew what you was getting game in and game out with these guys. And I thought Anthony Mason as well. And that's something the Knicks has slowly been lacking for a long time. And Stu was a guy that Knicks fans would get behind almost immediately from day one because he would kind of epitomize what Knicks fans grew up watching and what they're learning for to come at the Madison Square Garden.
Yep.
Yeah. So here's a quote, by the way, from Mike Hopkins, his coach at Washington and former Jim Boeheim, pretty much coach in waiting for Syracuse before he left. He reminds me of a bigger version of Montrezl Harrell and a little Bam Adebayo. Probably not as skilled as Bam because he can handle it, but the same motor. It's a relentless, you can't teach. It's a mindset. Were you cheating and reading the Mike Hopkins scouting report, Anthony?
No, but you guys have to remember, I mean, the Bam Adebayo comparison that they're making is not the Bam that we saw in the NBA Finals. They're comparing him to rookie year Bam, how he came into the league, and they're seeing that comparison. And the hope is that he grows into what Bam is now.
There's a lot that needs to happen.
Understand that. They're not comparing him to Bam now, but Bam as he was when he first came into the league.
Although college will always kind of stay.
Yeah, you gotta think about it too. Yeah, you gotta think about it too. And Montrezl Harrell, before the NBA stoppage, was having a career year and a borderline all-star for a guy coming off the bench, and obviously won the Sixth Man of the Year. The Montrezl Harrell we saw in the bubble, that's not the Montrezl Harrell that they're comparing him to, because, you know, I think about it.
They're not even comparing him to the guy.
He lost his grandmother, came to the bubble late, which is never in playing shape, which didn't help the Clippers one iota. But you think about those comparisons and what he can develop into.
Right.
The comparisons are pretty much spot on.
All right. So the Knicks have to do free agency by law, even though they really have no real aspiration. They have aspirations, but there's nobody who they really is on the radar. But there is one person in Christian Wood of the Detroit Pistons. It's an interesting fit. A lot of the people in the Knicks organization are enamored with Wood, and people believe that he is on the Knicks' radar. The 25-year-old Wood bounced around between 4 teams over his first 3 NBA seasons, landed with the Pistons in 2019-2020, and put up career best numbers. He appeared in 62 games last year and set personal best across the board, 13.1 points, 6.3 rebounds, and 1 assist. Also shot 56.7 from the field and is in that 35 to 40% magic number range beyond the arc, going 38.6%. When Andre Drummond got traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers for reasons unknown for both sides on February 6th, Wood averaged 22.8 points in 13 games, 22.8 points for Wood, 9.9 rebounds, 2 assists, and a block. Imagine if he had a full season. He was 13th in player efficiency rating last year in the NBA. He has a chance to become a star caliber player, and it might allow you to have some flexibility to get the needs that you really should get by getting rid of Julius Randle. So let's see what happens. But I think the Knicks really shouldn't be doing too much in free agency, but pursue that option.
Agreed.
All right. So guys, when we get to the Knicks, that means we have to go to the Nets, which means we have our Daily Double. The New York Nets, the Brooklyn Nets, that team from the Barclays Center. The Nets haven't played since the end of August, but when they start in December, they'll get a present under the tree in Kevin Durant. Finally. And eventually they'll have Kyrie Irving with them. Yes, Anthony, we're legally contracted to mention Kyrie Irving. They will also have a new coach, Steve Nash, and a very notable coaching staff to go with him, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But they have a pick at number 17, Anthony. Who should it be?
If he's available, I think they should take R.J. Hampton. He played in Australia last season, so he kind of bypassed the whole college experience. So he does have a little professional experience under his belt. Think about this. He's a versatile wing player that the Brooklyn Nets are going to desperately need, because if the rumor mill are true and they move Spencer Dinwiddie, they're going to need another scorer to come off the bench. And we know Kyrie's annual 20 to 25 games missed because of injury is going to kick in at some point. You also have Kevin Durant, who is coming back from almost a career-threatening injury, and at the age of 32, and Achilles, you have no idea how Kevin Durant will come back. And also, you think about this, Caris LeVert, another guy that's another scoring option, and they may lose Joe Harris for free agency. So it would be a boom for Brooklyn to be able to add another wing player who can be a versatile scorer, who can play on the ball, play off the ball. as a great finisher around the rim. What he does need to work on, he has to work on his outside shooting beyond the 3-point arc. He's not much of a 3-point shooter, but obviously in Brooklyn, maybe he doesn't have to rely on this so much. But if you're gonna have Kevin Durant as a teammate, you better learn how to knock down threes from the corner, and that's something he's gonna have to work on big time. And also his defense is like a lot of young players, aren't exactly fine-tuned. I think Steve Nash and the coaching staff will be able to work with him, with Dad, Jacques Vaughn especially. But, his athleticism is kind of what stands out. And he's been rumored that Dallas is looking at him as well. So who knows if he'll be there. But if he's around, when it's time for the Nets to pick, I say take him. I mean, because it's not like we mentioned earlier, it's not a superstar top-heavy draft. It's basically more of a draft by need, what we're going to see next week. So Brooklyn, it's going to be a little thin in the wing player department. O.J. Hampton be a great guy they can hold on to. Not to mention, keep in mind, going out the next season, both Durant and Kyrie Irving can opt out. So in the worst-case scenario, if one of those or both guys decide to leave Brooklyn, you at least have a foundation piece of build moving forward, depending on what happens next season. I'm telling you, 2020, this season for the Brooklyn Nets is going to be very interesting, not because of them being perennial title contenders in the Eastern Conference, but because of what happens if things don't work out so well. You got a first-year head coach, a very experienced coaching staff, and you got 2 superstar mercurial players who we've seen can be all in, and even all out at times. So like I said, the Nets is going to have to be looking not just forward to next season, but in the next 5 years when they make this draft pick.
Yeah, it's actually interesting, though. I think a little bit of extra time helps Kevin Durant because now it's 18 months since he's played since that injury, and I think you're going to see the best of Kevin Durant to start off. So remember when the Nets got all of those big-time free agents in the trade with the Celtics and they became like the mismatched all-stars? Kind of reminds me of the coaching staff that's about to come under Steve Nash, Jay.
Yeah, it's a very interesting amalgamation of basketball coaching talent, most of whom actually have a connection to either Steve Nash or Sean Marks, or both. And as we all know, that even Nash and Marks have a connection. So the guy that I'm most going to look at, because he holds a very unique position on this coaching staff due to his resume, and that's Mike D'Antoni. It's not surprising, guys, when a rookie/first-time head coach hires a veteran with head coaching experience as part of his staff. What's interesting is when said veteran, former head coach, is not the lead assistant. That's the situation in Brooklyn, where Steve Nash has added his former coach in Phoenix, Mike D'Antoni, to his staff, but the former Houston head man is not the lead assistant. That role belongs to Jacques Vaughn, who was the interim head coach this past season after Kenny Atkinson was let go. To keep Vaughn and to maintain some continuity with the current roster, the Nets GM made Vaughn the highest paid lead assistant in the NBA. So what will D'Antoni's role be, and how much influence will he have on things with Nash? Now, look, guys, just because Nash and D'Antoni have reconnected doesn't mean they're going to immediately revive the 7 seconds or less offense they ran in Phoenix, nor does it mean they're going to run a version of the offense that D'Antoni ran in Houston with James Harden just because they have Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. D'Antoni, though, over the course of his career, has shown the adaptability that good coaches need to have in order to be successful. Here's an interesting quote from Nash on D'Antoni. People talk about the Phoenix teams I played on and this sort of revolutionary tone of how it impacted the game. But truth be told, Mike D'Antoni's brilliance in much of that was that he allowed it to evolve instead of getting in the way. Meaning D'Antoni didn't demand that every time the ball came up the floor, they were running something specific to his scheme. He knew who he had out there with Nash, with Stoudemire, with some of these other guys, that sometimes, you know what, you just step back and let them do what they do. D'Antoni seems to understand when to speak up and when to put his trust in the players to figure it out for themselves. As I said, he did that with Nash in Phoenix and should take a similar approach as an assistant. The Nets have two of the most prolific scorers in the game in Irving and Durant. The offense has to start with them, and it will. D'Antoni's a great offensive mind, and I can see that type of collaboration between him, Nash, and Vaughn, who did a hell of a job getting the Nets to play a serious brand, a competitive brand of offensive basketball, even though on paper they were lacking in talent against almost everyone they ran up against.
We laughed at them a lot going into the bubble.
Right. So I can see the three of them putting their heads together and designing an offense that best fits the skill sets of not only Kyrie and KD, but all the other players on the roster that surround them. What's going to be interesting, though, is how long this current amalgamation lasts, because Vaughn was up for head coaching interviews. D'Antoni's always going to be up for head coaching interviews unless he's decided he's reached the point in his career where he wants to step back and just be someone's mentor. And let's not forget, Ime Udoka, who will be Nash's defensive coordinator, was also interviewed for a couple of job openings. So it's an interesting staff, and it has the potential to really lift the Nets up in this key year for them. But it's also a question of, like, how long are Kyrie and KD going to stay? How long are these assistants going to stay? It's going to make for a very interesting season to watch both on the floor and on the bench.
That's why I think they're hoping to God that this doesn't get anything paused COVID-related in 2020-21, or else it could be a long road back for the Nets because they may not even see Durant and Irving on the floor at the same time. Okay, so the Nets, kind of like the Knicks, should stay pat with getting free agents, but they got to keep the people who are about to become free agents on the team, whether it be this year or next. And obviously the big name, as Anthony just mentioned, is Joe Harris. There is only one guy who
One guy
who has shot better than 43% since 2017-18 on at least 5 3-point attempts per game. It's not any one of the Splash Brothers. It's Joe Harris. He is the perfect man to be open in this offense. And when you have Kyrie and KD, he's going to be open a lot. He ran 1.38 miles per game on the offensive end last season, and that's 19th in the league. So he basically can also go to the rack if opponents run him off the line. He shot 50.2% on 6.5 drives per game last season. He is an otherworldly efficient shooter, and the fact is his ceiling could go way up if he gets re-signed. Jared Allen is an interesting choice, is an interesting situation too, because the Nets basically have DeAndre Jordan on the team in a window dressing, hey, good job, guys, kind of role for a ton of money. The Nets must make a decision on Allen by pretty much opening day, or he will become a restricted free agent in the middle of 2021 once the season begins. The 6 seeding games in the bubble, 15.7 points, 11 rebounds a game, and hit 4.2 assists. And he averaged 10.3 points and 14.8 boards. That's the most in the NBA playoffs, going for almost 15 boards per game. Former Nets assistant GM Bobby Marks said he thinks that he wants Clint Capella type of money, and that's Mike D'Antoni knows a lot about Clint Capella. And if you remember, Clint Capella now got a 5-year, $90 million extension in 2018 when he was 24. Jared Allen is going to be a big piece of this team this year, but if they don't re-sign him, it's going to be a problem for the organization in the future. Maybe they also cut their losses and try to get even more pieces for this team going forward. All right.
That's called the JaVale McGee position. Make sure you call it correctly there.
Oh, God. JaVale McGee position. Let's not even talk about him. Anyway, onward to the aforementioned free agency and the rest of the NBA. The aforementioned free agency is not necessarily your tournament of champions, so to speak. It's not a great class of free agents. Big names are restricted, have a good possibility to pick up options, kind of like Gordon Hayward, or are Anthony Davis. Sorry, Anthony, he's disqualified from your question because he's almost certain to go back to a team that he just won a ring with. Good job by the Unibrow. Anthony, who is the prize of free agency?
Let's see. NBA champion, played for a team north of the border. Who is Fred VanVleet?
Correct.
Yes, okay. You know what? VanVleet is a great NBA story of a guy who works hard and really turned into a key piece to an NBA championship team. Let's not forget his Game 6 performance against Golden State, and the Raptors probably don't win the NBA title without VanVleet's clutch performances and clutch shooting in that series. Last season, this past season that just ended, he averaged 17.5 points a game, 6 assists, just under 4.4 rebounds a game, and shot just under 40% from threes. So he is a very, very solid point guard who knows how to score, but also run the offense. And we saw in Toronto how him and Pascal Siakam was able to anchor an offense that lost Kawhi Leonard, but was still among the league leaders in offense with the Toronto Raptors and repeating as division champs. Now, here's the thing. Here's the quagmire that the Raptors have. You want to bring VanVleet back. By the way, Kyle Lowry is also a free agent. So you got two guys you want to bring back. However, 2021, the offseason of 2021 is around the corner, and there's a guy named Giannis Antetokounmpo who may be available. You kind of want to keep your money, stored up. You want to keep the Nets egg stored up in case he decides to leave Milwaukee and want to see if the grass is greener on the other side. So Toronto is kind of stuck in that situation when they want to keep their guys, but they want to leave the door open to go after to pursue Giannis after next season. And look, Detroit is a team that's been rumored to be very interested in signing VanVleet. VanVleet even came out a couple of days ago. I sent you the quote that he's won an NBA championship. Now it's time for him to get paid. So that in itself is a sign that he may be playing basketball elsewhere next season, and it won't be with the Toronto, New Jersey, or wherever the heck they're going to play next season, Raptors. But VanVleet would be a great solid addition. If he goes to Detroit, you think about this, they still have Blake Griffin on the team, and they have Derrick Rose. So those are guys that he may be able to play with, but he'll be able to. But right away, he's a guy that can step in and immediately have a positive impact on the team. So he is definitely my most watched free agent to look at, because point guards who can perform on both ends of the court, they don't grow on trees. And Toronto may be in a position where they're losing both guys. That was so key to winning a championship just 2 seasons ago.
Well, Lowry actually has one more year left. He is a free agent in 2021. He has a $30.5 million year coming up, but 2021, he'll be a free agent, just to let you know. So it'll be a little bit longer for Kyle Lowry in, let's say, Albany. The Albany Raptors next season. That has a good ring to it, right? Right? Anyway, the 76ers are Jay's team, obviously, and they went through a lot of changes so far.
And uniforms.
Doc Rivers and new president Daryl Morey.
Yeah, I just saw those new uniforms the other day. Looking pretty sharp, I got to say. Rabbi, you kind of called it. I mean, no team has changed more since the end of the bubble experience than Philadelphia. I mean, while the roster still centers around Joel Embiid and a hopefully healthy Ben Simmons, the bench in the front office underwent a colossal change, starting with the firing of Brett Brown and replacing him with former Clippers head coach Doc Rivers in what seemed like 5 minutes after the Nuggets bounced the Clips from the playoffs. And then before the dust had a real chance to settle on that hire, and not long after, GM Elton Brand hired 2 new lieutenants of his own for the basketball operations department, the team hired a new boss for Brand in Daryl Morey, the longtime head of basketball ops for the Houston Rockets. It'll be very interesting to see how Doc Rivers and Daryl Morey mesh and how Brand acclimates to not being the primary decision maker anymore. He said all the right things when Morey was signed, but we'll see how that plays out. Morey put teams together in Houston that were diametrically different over the course of his time there, from the combo of Tracy McGrady and Yao Ming to the combo of Russell Westbrook and James Harden. From heavy pick and roll to heavy iso ball with reliance on the three, from having a legit NBA center to having no centers at all. The Sixers, in my mind, guys, present a very interesting laboratory for Rivers and Morey, with one of the only true low post back to the basket centers, partnered with a one-man fast break who can play and guard multiple positions, but can't or simply won't put up a mid-range jumper, let alone a three? Can they find the mixture to create good chemistry between these guys and the rest of the team, or will the combined elements just blow up on them? What type of offensive scheme will Rivers put together to best make use of the talents of Embiid and Simmons? It was something that Brett Brown struggled to do this past season, and he admitted to it. Will Morey, either via the draft or free agency, be able to fill in the roster around the two young All-Stars with players who have the complementary skill sets that the current roster does not? The Sixers need shooters. There is still a huge hole where J.J. Redick used to be, as well as ball handlers who know how to initiate offense, including, but not limited to, making a simple post-entry pass. I will not revisit my rant from earlier in the bubble experience on that.
And we can re-air it if you want, by the way, right now. We have time.
Can they figure out how best to make Al Horford fit into the rotation or trade him for players or draft picks who will? Can they get Tobias Harris back to who he used to be when Rivers last coached him? Can they build the culture of accountability that just Josh Richardson said was very lacking under Brett Brown? It's very rare that top-flight coaches become available. It's just as rare that a top-flight basketball operations executive becomes available. That both were there for the Sixers to hire is about as blue moon a scenario as it gets in the NBA. What they do between next week's draft and the start of training camp will be closely scrutinized, and rightfully so.
Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if there was anything that stood out for the 76ers in their bubble experience was the just exasperated looks on Joel Embiid's face when he was in good position and they just could not get him the ball down in the post. I mean, that was a big issue. And it was just exasperating when Ben Simmons went down. They literally just had no point guard that could direct the offense. And that's going to be key, right, for Doc Rivers, is figuring out a way to make the best of his two-star players.
Well, let's be fair, though. The 76ers weren't, I hate to say this word, the cat's pajamas before heading into the bubble, because they were still sixth in the Eastern Conference, and they're more talented than Indiana, and they were more talented than Miami, and they couldn't win a game away from home to save their life.
No Ben Simmons.
They needed an organizational reset, and so they got one. Also, you mentioned Daryl Morey and Mike D'Antoni. We're not going to get into the Rockets' possible implosion on this week's show, but I have a feeling
that for next week.
We might have to say that for next week because it's a very interesting story. Okay. There is a team that can win this offseason just by improving their team, and it's the team that did not lose a game in the bubble, and that's the Phoenix Suns. Devin Booker is now a top 10 superstar, enough to the point where Draymond Green went on Inside the NBA right after the bubble, I think, and said Devin Booker should not be a Phoenix Sun. It's going to hurt his career, even though he signed an extension with the Phoenix Suns about 2 years ago. But Booker has expressed a little bit of concern for the team's play. I think that was pre-bubble, but they still need to improve, because if you look at those playoffs from last year, Portland's going to get better. Memphis is going to get better. Then you're not going to penetrate Dallas, who Luka Doncic is going to be a star for. And then you've got great organizations like the Nuggets in Utah, who aren't going away. Maybe you can get that Oklahoma City spot, but Oklahoma City has draft capital for days and 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 days because of the Paul George. Because of the Paul George trade. So here are some targets that I think they can go after. They're not big names, but they're decent names on the market. Nerlens Noel. He did a damn good job when he was with the Thunder. He could back up DeAndre Ayton, who still has a lot to learn out there and probably get 20 minutes a game. He's a veteran and can provide great depth. Davis Bertans from the Washington Wizards. You get him off a high. You're never going to get anything better than what he did last year in Washington when he almost played at an all-star level. And he can shoot the three. He really is a 3-and-D guy. Or you can almost go the exact opposite of that and go Serge Ibaka, who will definitely give you a lot of experience, has been in dogfights, and can really provide a veteran presence for one of the youngest teams in the league. The Phoenix Suns need to make an impact in this free agency, because if they don't, they're going to fall into even bigger irrelevance than they are right now.
Yeah. Rabbi, is Draymond going to get fined for trying to induce somebody else to come play with him?
Oh, Draymond Green has a lot of fines right now that he's paid. I don't think he cares, although he really is going to be a great inside the NBA analyst when he.
Oh yeah.
He was during the playoffs. Shaq and Charles Barkley going at it every Thursday night. It's hilarious. You throw Draymond Green into that mix. It's must-see TV. But kudos to the Suns, and they'll City Edition uniforms, the new Valley black black uniforms.
There's some good ones out there, by the way, for the City Editions this year.
Yeah, I am really loving some of these City Edition uniforms that the teams are coming out with this year. The 76ers are good, the Suns are good. Like I said, even the Nets going back to the Derek Coleman, Kenny Anderson tie-dye era.
God, let's hold off on that.
Yeah,
hold off on that one.
That brings back Jonathan Petrovich, so I approve.
All right, let's move on and switch categories again to the National Football League and the locals. Let's move on to a team that can almost never make it all the way through the game because they're always in negative dollars in every single way, shape, and form during the game, the New York Giants. Although they were winners last week, 23-20 against a team who Daniel Jones is 4-0 against, and won for everybody else against, and that is the aforementioned earlier in the show, the Washington football team. They're now 2-7 on the season. Yeah! Woo! Okay, so let's talk about the offense and talk about Daniel Jones' best game, Jay.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first time he's played a clean game all season. 23 of 34, 212 yards, 1 TD, 0 INTs, 0 fumbles lost. 67.5% completion was his highest in any game, as was his 94.2 passer rating. The only real negative was he was sacked 5 times. He got an assist from a solid run game, led by the unlikely two-headed monster of Wayne Gallman, who had 68 yards on 14 carries and a score, and former Washington football team running back Alfred Morris, who had 9 carries for 67 yards. The team as a whole, and this is without Jones really being involved in the run game, racked up 166 yards on the ground.
Let me just say this. In the Buck game, too, Wayne Gallman was impressive. You're starting to see something from the Clemson guy.
Yep. That's an average of 4.7 yards per attempt for the team on the ground. And the Giants won time of possession again, owning the ball for 36 minutes and 27 seconds. I also think part of the reason Jones played a better game is that they left Golden Tate home, thus eliminating a distraction. Props to Joe Judge, well handled. Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram, and Tate's replacement, Austin Mack, all had solid games hooking up with Jones. Darius Slayton was quiet, but with the Giants getting more conservative in the passing game, making Jones more of a game manager than a playmaker, something I talked about last week, that is to be expected. Jones learning to take what the defense gives him, even if that means less big plays, with his favorite big play receiver, helps the Giants in the long run. A coach's job, guys, and we've talked about this often, especially an offensive coordinator, is to put his quarterback, especially a young quarterback who is still learning to play the game at the NFL level, like Jones, in the best position to succeed. Jason Garrett has tweaked the passing game to put Jones in dropbacks to get the ball out of his hands in 2.5 seconds or less. There were several throws where he got it out of his hands in less than 2 seconds, which is 2.5 seconds is optimal. They ran more max protect to keep the pocket intact longer for an offensive line that has been inconsistent in pass protection. Again, 5 sacks. It may reduce the number of big downfield shots that Jones and Slayton have hooked up on before, but this is about improving Jones's decision-making and reducing his turnovers. I know that some people don't agree with this strategy, but as this is Garrett's first year with Jones, and it's a year with no May OTAs, no June passing camps, and no preseason games, Jones is starting over at square one. I have said this all season long. People need to stop comparing Jones's rookie year with his second season. It's hard to make that second-year leap if you're playing in your third offense, your third different offense in as many years. Jones is still off to a better start to his career than Eli had with his. The two steps back that Garrett is taking with Jones now may be what gets Jones to take those 2 steps forward next season, and it will be worth it.
Yeah, I mean, but again, please explain this to me.
I'll
You
try.
win the turnover battle by 5, and you still win by only 3, and you have 36 minutes in TOP. How? It's almost amazing. The Giants defense didn't really account for it, and once again, led a backup quarterback basically throw the ball over them in the second half. Speaking of Anthony, defense.
You know what? Defense, I got to give them a B- this week. I mean, they did a tremendous job in forcing those takeaways without question. Jabril Peppers with an interception, a fumble recovery, and it was very good, solid coverage. And I talked about this with Joseph Fall last week, that opposite corner position outside of Bradbury was a concern because they've gone through a cycle of starting corners. They actually released Corey Ballantyne.
Door.
Yeah, it's been evolving. They released one of those guys, Corey Ballantyne, this week, who the Jets, for whatever reason, claimed, and we'll get to them in a minute. But Isaac Yadam started on that side, and he made a play on a Terry McLaurin's pass. It would have been a 20-yard completion. He overruns it and misses the tackle, and McLaurin scrambles down, runs downfield for a 68-yard touchdown. That cannot happen when you think about the cover 3 coverage that the Giants were in. That would basically deal to prevent a play like that from happening. So that secondary corner is going to be a question all season. It's something the Giants has got to figure out. But Patrick Graham's defense did a great job in the first half. They dominated that game without question. I mean, they held Washington to 37 yards on offense, really made it one-dimensional. But again, you talked about it. Alex Smith coming in, throwing for 325 yards. And McLaurin has 7 catches for 115. Cam Sims, 3 catches for 110. They started giving up a lot of big plays downfield in the second half. And it's been kind of a microcosm of the Giants defensively. They play so well to keep them in games, but they just can't find a way to eliminate these big plays enough to where they can at least win comfortably if they even get to that situation. But you think about this, Devin Thomason has done a great job. And the Giants' front four has been the strength all season long. Leonard Williams continues to kind of have a resurgent season, got his 5th sack this season. Blake Martinez got his first interception with the Giants. Logan Ryan with the interception that kind of sealed the game. The Giants' defense is there, and it's been it's always been their biggest strength. So maybe, like Jay said, maybe Daniel Jones being more of a game manager suits this rendition of the Giants right now because you have a defense that is good enough to keep you in games. And now we're seeing it has the ability to take the ball away. And you look at the NFC East, they have the Eagles coming into town this week, and only a game out of the win column in a really bad but somehow winnable division. Like, somebody has to win this division at some point. But the Giants are sitting right there, and their defense is improving. They've got to cut down on the big plays, however, and they've got to be able to play consistency regardless of who the quarterback is. They lost the game in Dallas because they couldn't slow down a backup quarterback. They cannot go into these precarious situations where they're somehow a little clueless when the second-string quarterback comes into play. Granted, Alex Smith is a great savvy veteran. I give him that. I give him all of that, and he did a great job of picking apart the Giants secondary. However, the Giants defense being able to take the ball away, I think, really kind of offset some of the big plays that were given up in the second half of that game.
Yeah, I mean, Rabbi, those 2 words right there, big plays. That's the answer to the question you posed. The Giants no longer are getting them on the offensive side because of the way they're being more conservative. Therefore, the defense can ill afford to give them up on their side. So that's literally it in a nutshell. Big plays.
Yeah.
Yeah, you think about it, a big play is what cost them the game against the Rams, and a big play that cost them against Dallas. A big play here and a big play there.
Cost them against the Eagles.
It's been a microcosm of this season, whereas they just have to learn to finish games. And It was a step in the right direction last Sunday.
Yeah, and speaking of that Eagles team that's coming on Sunday at MetLife Stadium in a huge NFC East matchup. Yeah.
Why does that seem that's an oxymoron this year, Rabbi?
Oh, it sure is, which is why the quotation marks happened. October 22nd, just 3 weeks ago, the Eagles won 22-21. It was a game that obviously the Giants just dominated and had 92. Daniel Jones had 92 rushing yards against the Eagles, including the 80-yard burst, which ended in a little bit of a trip and was one of the
bumbling
that week. But again, as mentioned, Wayne Gallman and Alfred Morris are kind of doing the job. The Eagles are getting so much back this week, though, from that game from 3 weeks ago. They have Jalen Reagor to be probably their top wide receiver. They have their all-world running back Miles Sanders. They'll have one of their tight ends back in Dallas Goedert, Malik Jackson, defensive tackle, linebacker T.J. Edwards, and maybe left guard Isaac Sumalo. Reagor scored his first NFL touchdown when he played against Dallas 2 weeks ago. Goddard wasn't really 100%, but was coming back from a broken ankle. Sanders, it was amazing. However, the one thing that's different from that first matchup in Philadelphia, Jones only had 170 yards and completed passes to 5 different receivers. In the game on Sunday against Washington, Jones completed to 10 different guys, and then again was with no Golden Tate, who I would be shocked if he enters a game in a Giants uniform again. This is going to be a very interesting dichotomy of a game. I think the Giants' 2 worst losses this year were the overtime loss to Dallas, was not the overtime, but the second loss to Dallas and the game against Philadelphia. They win those 2 games. They're leading the division.
Yeah.
And, but I think most importantly for the Giants, it's not even the division. I think it's just getting wins against the Giants, against the Eagles and Cowboys, which they haven't had for 4 to 5 years now. So those rematches are very important, and it starts with Sunday's matchup. Moving on, I have one more answer for you guys tonight. This team almost miraculously won their first game on Monday night, which might have disappointed their fans all across the nation as they had nightmares of Trevor Lawrence in a Jaguar jersey. Anthony?
Who is the New York Jets?
Correct. Let's get our takes of the 30-27 walk-off field goal loss to the Patriots, starting with Jack.
My takeaway is that old Joe Flacco played like the Joe Flacco of old, mostly. With Sam Darnold out again with a shoulder injury, the Jets once again turned to veteran backup Joe Flacco. And this time, he looked a lot like the quarterback we remember from his heyday in Baltimore. And for the first time all season, the Jets, who came into that Monday night football game last in yards per game, points per game, and offensive efficiency, and had only topped 17 points and 300 yards of total offense once, looked like an actual NFL team, at least until their last 2 possessions of the game. Flacco went 18 for 25. That's a 72% completion, 262 yards. That's almost 10.5 yards an attempt, 3 scores, 1 pick, 1 sack, and a 128.7 passer rating. Who is this guy? And the deep ball, which, as we all remember, was Flacco's forte in Baltimore, was a big part of the Jets' passing game. Brett Perriman, Denzel Mims, and Jamison Crowder were on the field together for the first time all season, and each had at least 1 catch of 20-plus yards, led by Flacco's 50-yard TD hookup with Perriman, who had his best game of the year with 5 catches for 101 yards and 2 scores. He hooked up with Jamison Crowder for a 20-yard touchdown, hit Mims with a 26-yarder, and even Ryan Griffin got in on the chunk play action with a 23-yard catch. But alas, the Jets are still the Jets, and they found a way to steal defeat from the jaws of victory. Right after the Patriots cut the Jets' lead to 7, yes, you heard that right, the Jets actually led in this game. Flacco ignored a wide-open Griffin and threw in a double-covered Mims. The Pats picked it off, and that led to a game-tying touchdown. The Jets got another possession, but Flacco decided to take a sack instead of throwing to a wide-open LaMichael Perine. And the ensuing punt gave the ball back to New England, and you know how things ended. It's the best game the offense has played all season long, but sadly, like all others, this game ended up with the Jets 1 loss closer to 0-16.
Well, Greg Williams would probably say that the offense completely lost this game for them, even though it was their best game of the year. Speaking of, Anthony, the defense for the Jets on Monday night.
You know what? The defense pretty much squandered the Jets' offensive best performance without question. If you think about this, how often, we was in the group chat, how often did we question Cam Newton's arm strength? Because he really struggled to throw the ball for anything above 15 yards Monday night, and yet somehow the Jets defense could not get a stop in the second half. They gave up drives of 17, 13, and 11 plays. The Jets offense ran 4 plays, the entire fourth quarter. Is that an indictment on the Jets offense, or is it more the Jets defense inability to get off the field and make a stop of any kind?
The latter.
Yeah, it's the latter. Think about this. Jacoby Myers, 12 catches, 169 yards, was like John Taylor out there against his Jets secondary. Cam Newton finished with 27-35, 274 yards. But the thing was, there was one play, and it was the 20-yard completion to Myers that set up the game-winning field goal. The safety, for whatever reason, ran with the deep route and left Myers all alone in that soft coverage for probably the easiest 20-yard completion of the night for Cam Newton, and he literally looked like he could not throw the ball beyond 15 yards. I mean, this is literally like a guy that can't throw the ball downfield.
Like Peyton Manning his last year in Denver.
Like Drew Brees up until last Sunday night. We were questioning, can he throw the ball downfield? But the miscommunication and the coverage really just besides me. Also, Pierre Desire's effort on Damian Burrow's 31-yard catch and run. You know what? That's a play that if you're in a film session and the rest of your teammates have to see that and the coach call you out, you probably want that film session to end so you get the heck out of there as quickly as possible. I've been in film sessions, by the way, and obviously Rabbi covering WSU, and we remember Coach Joe Gardy knack for being very strict on effort. Yes. And you know what? If he was coaching this Jet team, the F-bombs and it would be pretty substantial. I know he hated us. That's part of the media. But you think one day he hated more was lack of effort. And that was really bad. And it's an epitome of an 0-9 team that could easily go 0-16 because I'm looking at the schedule and I'm like, well, is this team going to even stumble into a win? They should have. They had one literally given to them. Yep. And the defense, by the way, this is on Greg Williams now. He can't say that this is the offensive fault. This is all on Greg Williams not coaching his team the way a defensive coordinator should, especially when you have a very mismatched young secondary that don't have any experience whatsoever. And this is the plays you get. You get lack of effort. You get miscommunication that gives us a 20-yard completion to a guy who can't complete anything beyond 10 yards. This is exactly that the Jets, at least they were competitive this year. They've only been competitive in 3 of their games this season, and it just happened to be the 3 games they could have easily won and not be 0 for 2020. So, like I said, the only good news this week is the fact, and I hate to kind of chime into your angle on this one, Rabbi, but the good news is they can't lose this week. They're not playing.
Wait, that's my angle? No, my angle was just to mention that the wide receivers on this team could have easily – I mean, you're not getting rid of Denzel Mims. He was your first-round draft pick, but Jamison Crowder could help out a team somewhere for the stretch run, maybe even Cleveland.
I said he's the guy they should trade.
Yeah, you did, and then –
he's the big trade bait.
Yeah, and Brashard Perryman – could have easily been a good piece for somebody, even if you gave up a 6th-round pick. Why not trade any of these wide receivers? You might actually have some good pieces for Sam Darnold to throw to towards the end of the year, but who knows now? Because you needed to get rid of some of your pieces at the trade deadline. 2 things before we move on. Number 1, I did not – when you see Jacoby Myers on the field, don't you just want to put an "and" in between their name? It's call of a law firm.
Yes.
And number 2,
you should say ampersand Myers.
Yes. And
Don't give
number
Chris
two,
Berman the idea, however. He still does NFL primetime on ESPN Plus. Don't give him the idea.
oh, it's coming. And also, number two, I remember back in, I think it was 2016's playoffs when Andy Reid, before he had Patrick Mahomes and had Alex Smith at quarterback against the Patriots in a playoff game, had an 11-minute drive that ended in a field goal. And how much is it like come around that Bill Belichick had a 9-minute, 50-second drive that ended in a field goal? See, Anthony takes that as a negative. I almost take that as a positive because drives like that can do anything for your team. Seriously. Moving on. So we're at the point where we would hit our Final Jeopardy category. And like Final Jeopardy, it needs to be studied up on and is a fairly difficult thing for our panelists to actually understand and usually take a guess. So, of course, our Final Jeopardy category is golf. Anyway, the Masters, the tradition unlike any other, is not in its traditional spot. It's this weekend instead of it being around Easter. Curfew being 5:30, 6 o'clock instead of 8:30. With one round in the books, let's pick our winner.
I'm going with Bryson DeChambeau, who shot an opening round 70, is tied for 21st at 2 under, with one round in the books for him. The 2020 U.S. Open winner is always an intriguing pick in any tournament because he constantly goes his own way. The Masters will be no different. The guy whose strategy is to hit the ball farther than everyone else, which is how he won by 6 strokes at Winged Foot, is supposedly bringing a 48-inch driver to Augusta, which favors golfers like the scientist, who has shown the ability to hit the ball 400 yards. So, if DeChambeau is accurate off the tee, everyone else will be in big trouble. And if he's not, then chances are he may not be a factor come the weekend. Look, DeChambeau is all about breaking golf, and Augusta could give him the chance to do that and change some conventional wisdoms along the way. Look, I like guys who can make things interesting. He always does. It's why he's my pick.
Anthony?
Yeah, I'm going with the guy that I generally pick in PGA Tour 2K21 because I'm not even going to pretend like I'm a golf expert here, okay? I'm going to go with Dustin Johnson. And if you look at the leaderboard, it's a log jam after first place. I mean, there are guys that at this point, it can swing either way. But Dustin Johnson coming into Augusta National, 4 straight top 10 finishes, a tie for second last year. Tested positive for COVID-19 earlier this year, so he missed consecutive starts. The CJ Cup and his Otsl Championship. And before that, he had 3 of his previous 9 events. He had won 3 of his previous 9 events and finished runner-up in 2 others. So I'm going to go with Dustin Johnson, maybe to come out of that log jam. He shot 3 under in the first round. And this, like I said, it's a log jam after round 1, after a rain-filled round 1. So who knows where it's going to go as the weekend progresses. By the way, Augusta National is going to look really something else in the middle of November rather than the middle of April with the change of the leaves and the early sunset time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so my pick is also, so Dustin Johnson is the number 1 player in the world. My pick is the number 2 player in the world and is also at 3 under through round 1 and had a ridiculous hole-in-one during a practice round at the Masters on Tuesday where he skipped the ball over the water.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah, that was amazing.
That was awesome.
Amazingly doing it. I think I picked him after it, but it was John Rahm. It's John Rahm. He's a 5-time PGA Tour winner, has won 11 times around the globe, and enters the week ranked number 2 in the world. He is one of the few people who are big names who haven't won a major because majors have kind of been spread all over the board. The season stoppage for COVID-19 was not easy. He was looking around errand to errand to find himself to get out of the house. He is a player who has top 10 finishes in 3 of the 4 majors, and his last 2 Masters tournaments as a tied for 9th and a tied for 4th. He ranked number 1 in strokes gained total last season, and he said to win the Masters, he needs to stay true to what he is. And right now, he's someone who is definitely in the hunt if you're 4 back in that log jam. you definitely have a chance to win. I think it's Paul Casey, who leads the Masters right now at -7, with Justin Thomas, Sandra Schifley, and Webb Simpson 2 back. But before we go, guys, there's a name that we didn't mention on that board who's 3 back, who just had the best round of his Masters career in the first round. That's Tiger Woods.
Who is Tiger Woods?
Well, I didn't say the question, my friends, so we're not in that board yet, but who knows what's going to happen with Tiger Woods? He was almost given for dead this year, and again, I barely knew he was the Masters champion because it was so long ago, but he's got a good chance if he continues playing like this.
Indeed.
All right.
Yeah, but it's 3 guys after Paul Casey does. 3 guys, including Justin Thomas, that is 5 under. There was literally several guys, including Tiger Woods, that's 4 under, and just almost 9, 10 guys that's 3 under. So it is a total logjam between Paul Casey and what is tied for 21 at CT Pond at 2 under. It could go either way at this point as far as who will come out on top.
Yeah, and here's the interesting thing about the way the tournament is being played this year. In order to ensure that they get everybody in a given day, you've got some guys who are teeing off on the front 9. You have other playing partners who are teeing off starting at hole 10 and playing the back 9 before they play the front 9, which will make it for a very interesting opening couple of days until the field gets whittled down for the weekend.
Yeah, and Justin Thomas, who's 2 back, only went through half of his round, so he's still got 8 holes tomorrow.
There you go.
All right, guys, that about does it. And how do we end the show? We end it with Think Music, goddammit. Anyway, for Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, my name is Steven Rabinowitz, and thank you for joining us for another edition of On the Sports Lines. We are online every Thursday, usually, except for next week. I'll get to that in a second, at facebook.com/onthesportslines, where you can take a look at our page. You can catch up on this show or any of the ones that you've missed, and trust me, we've done a lot of good shows, not just Jeopardy themed, at youtube.com/onthesportslines. And Jay, if you could talk over the music, we're at
ONTH Sports Lines. Follow us at that handle on Twitter.
So good news for us. We're going to do a live NBA draft show next Wednesday at 9:30. So join us that. Again, for Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, my name is Steven Rabinowitz. And again, RIP Alex Trebek. Anyway, good night from On the Sports Lines.
Good night, everyone.